The Winchester rifle cracked against the station master's temple with a sickening thud, and Calhoun Brewster knew her carefully laid plans had just crumbled to dust. "Step away from the lady, gentlemen." The voice rumbled like distant thunder. Across the weathered planks of Millbrook Station, 6.5 feet of raw muscle and determination filled the doorway, blocking out the harsh afternoon sun. The giant shadow fell across the three men who'd been circling her like vultures, their grimy hands already reaching for her carpetbag and the small fortune sewn into her dress's lining. Calhoun pressed herself against the station wall, her heart hammering as she watched the stranger's massive frame advance. His boots struck the floor with the weight of inevitability, spurs chiming a deadly rhythm. The would-be thieves fumbled for their weapons, but something in the giant's steel gray eyes made them hesitate. "I said step away." His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than a shout. "The lady's under my protection now." "We ain't done nothing wrong, mister," the station master wheezed, blood trickling from his scalp. "Just helping. This here woman understand the local customs." The giant's laugh was devoid of humor. "Local customs don't include robbery and worse." His hand rested casually on the pearl handle of his Colt, but Calhoun could see the coiled violence in his stance. "Mount up and ride now." The three men exchanged glances, weighing their chances against this mountain of a man. Wisdom won. They scrambled for their horses, leaving behind a trail of curses and dust. Calhoun finally found her voice. "Thank you, sir. I don't know what would have happened if, name's Jareth Blackstone," he interrupted, turning those penetrating eyes on her. "And you're coming with me." The words hit her like a physical blow. "Excuse me?" "This station's 3 days from anywhere. Civilized and those yellow-bellied coyotes will be back with friends before sundown." He gathered her bags with one massive hand as if they weighed nothing. "My ranch is safe. You'll stay there until I can arrange proper transport to wherever you're headed, but I don't even know you." Calhoun protested, though part of her recognized the truth in his words. The isolated station offered no refuge, and the nearest town might as well have been on the moon. "You know, I just saved your life," Jareth replied matter-of-factly. "That's enough for now." He was already striding toward a magnificent black stallion that pawed impatiently at the hitching post. The horse was as imposing as its owner, all rippling muscle and barely contained power. "Sir, please, you can't just—" "Can't what?" He secured her bags behind his saddle with practiced efficiency. "Leave a woman to the mercy of cutthroats? Watch them strip you of everything, including your dignity, before they put a bullet in you?" His eyes blazed with something that might have been anger or protectiveness. "That's not how I was raised, ma'am." Before she could form another protest, his iron-strong arms lifted her as easily as a child, settling her sideways across his saddle. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her, a mixture of fear and something else she didn't want to name. "Hold tight," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear as he swung up behind her. "It's a hard ride to the Broken Crown Ranch." The Broken Crown Ranch sprawled across the valley like a small kingdom, and Calhoun gasped despite herself at the sight of it. Rolling pastures stretched toward distant mountains, dotted with hundreds of cattle bearing the distinctive Broken Crown brand. The main house rose from the landscape like something from a dream, not the rough cabin she'd expected, but a sprawling 2-story structure with a wraparound porch and gleaming windows. "It's beautiful," she breathed, momentarily forgetting her circumstances. Jareth's chest rumbled against her back. "Built it myself, board by board. Took 7 years." Pride colored his voice, and she felt some of her fear ease. A man who could create such beauty couldn't be entirely dangerous, could he? But as they approached the house, doubts crept back in. What did she really know about Jareth Blackstone? Only that he was massive, confident, and had swept her away. From danger into ... What exactly? Where will I sleep? She asked as he helped her down from the stallion. Guest rooms upstairs, second door on the right. He began untying her bags. Cordelia will see to your needs. As if summoned by her name, a plump woman with silver-streaked hair appeared on the porch, wiping flour-dusted hands on her apron. Jareth Blackstone, what have you brought home now? Trouble, most likely, he replied with the first genuine smile Callowin had seen from him. This is Miss ... I'm sorry, I never did catch your name. Callowin Brewster, she said, extending a gloved hand to the older woman. Cordelia's eyes sparkled with interest. Well now, aren't you a pretty thing? Come along, dear. Let's get you settled while this big ox tends to his horse. The interior of the house was even more impressive than the exterior. Rich hardwood floors gleamed beneath elegant furnishings that spoke of both wealth and refined taste. Callowin found herself staring at oil paintings and leather-bound books. Crystal decanters and Persian rugs. Surprised? Cordelia asked, catching her expression. Most folks expect a ranch house to be all rough timber and animal skins. But Jareth, he's got refined sensibilities. Educated back east before he came out. Here to build his empire. They climbed a polished oak staircase to the second floor, where Cordelia opened the door to a spacious bedroom decorated in soft blues and creams. A four-poster bed dominated the room, while tall windows offered views of the valley below. It's lovely, Callowin said sincerely, but Mrs. ... Just Cordelia, dear. I've been keeping house for Jareth since he was barely more than a boy trying to prove himself in this harsh country. Cordelia, I need to be clear. I'm not staying long. Mr. Blackstone may think he's being gallant, but I have my own plans. Older woman's expression grew serious. And what might those plans be, if you don't mind me asking? Callowin hesitated. She'd been traveling to meet her intended husband in Silver Creek, a man she'd never met but who'd answered her newspaper. Advertisement for correspondence. It wasn't a romantic arrangement, merely practical. She needed security, and he needed a wife to help establish his respectability as a businessman. But explaining that to this warm, motherly woman felt suddenly shameful. I'm expected in Silver Creek, she said finally. Silver Creek? Cordelia's eyebrows rose. That's over 200 miles north, through some of the most dangerous country in the territory. What on earth is in Silver Creek worth such a risk? Before Callowin could answer, heavy footsteps on the stairs announced Jareth's approach. He appeared in the doorway, somehow making the spacious room feel small. Everything satisfactory? He asked, his gaze lingering on Callowin with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. Quite satisfactory, thank you, she replied coolly. When? Might I expect to continue my journey? Something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment? Eager to leave already? I have obligations, Mr. Blackstone. People are expecting me. In Silver Creek, Cordelia interjected. The poor girl's planning to travel through Apache territory and worse. Jareth's expression darkened. Silver Creek? What business do you have in that godforsaken place? The possessive note in his voice sent a shiver through Callowin. That's rather personal, don't you think? Not when it concerns your safety under my roof. Thunder crashed across the valley as rain lashed the windows of the Broken Crown Ranch. Callowin had been there 3 days now, and each morning she expected Jareth to announce arrangements for her departure. Instead, he found reasons to delay, dangerous weather, reports of bandits on the northern trail, a broken wagon wheel that needed time to repair. She was beginning to suspect these were excuses. You can't keep me here indefinitely, she said. Over breakfast, watching him demolish a plate of eggs and bacon with the efficiency of a man accustomed to hard physical labor. Can't I? His gray eyes met hers with calm determination. This is my land, Miss Brewster, my rules. That sounds. dangerously close to imprisonment. That sounds like protection. He set down his coffee cup with deliberate care. Tell me about this obligation in Silver Creek. Who's worth risking your life for? Callowin's cheeks flushed. It's a private matter. Nothing's private when you're under my protection. Your protection? She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Or your captivity? Jareth rose as well, his imposing height forcing her to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. You think I'm some kind of villain? That I saved you from those wolves just to prey on you myself? I don't know what to think. You swept me away without my consent, you're keeping me here against my will, and you demand answers to questions that are none of your business. None of my business? His voice dropped to that dangerous whisper. She remembered from the station. Woman, I've killed men for less than what those coyotes had planned for you. I've turned my household upside down to accommodate you, given you the finest room in my house, and asked nothing in return but honesty. If that's villainy, then I'm the worst kind of scoundrel. Something in his tone, hurt beneath the anger, made Callowin pause. She studied his face, seeing for the first time the exhaustion in his eyes, the tension in his jaw. Whatever his motives, she was beginning to believe they weren't entirely selfish. I'm sorry, she said quietly. You did save me, and I've been ungrateful. Jareth's expression softened. I didn't rescue you for gratitude. Then why? He moved closer, close enough that she could smell leather and sage on his skin. Maybe because the moment I saw you, something inside me woke up that I thought was dead forever. The raw honesty in his words stole her breath. Mr. Blackstone, Jareth, just Jareth. Jareth, I'm engaged to be married. The words hit him like a physical blow. He stepped back, his face hardening into an unreadable mask. Engaged. To a businessman in Silver Creek. We've corresponded, but never met. It's a practical arrangement. Practical. The word dripped with contempt. You mean profitable. I mean necessary. Her own temper flared. Not all of us have the luxury of building empires and choosing our own fate. Some of us make the best bargains we can with the circumstances we're given. And what circumstances are those? Callowin turned away, moving to the window where rain still streaked the glass. My parents died of fever when I was 17. I had no family, no prospects, no inheritance except debts. I've spent the last 3 years working as a seamstress, barely earning enough to survive. When Mr. Cornelius Grimm answered my advertisement for correspondence, he offered stability, respectability, and the chance to escape poverty. Grimm? Jareth's voice went deadly quiet. Cornelius Grimm of Silver Creek? Something in his tone made her turn. You know him? I know of him. Jareth's hands clenched into fists. He's a snake, Callowin. Owns half the brothels between here and Denver, plus the gambling halls and opium dens. He's looking for a respectable wife to cover his reputation. Not because he has any intention of treating her well. That's not. But her protest died as she saw the certainty in his eyes. 3 wives already, and all 3 died under mysterious circumstances. The law can't touch him because he's got judges and sheriffs in his pocket, but everyone knows. Callowin sank into a chair as the implications crashed over her. You're lying. Am I? Jareth moved to a desk in the corner and withdrew a newspaper clipping. Read it yourself. Last wife died in a fall down the stairs. The one before that from a sudden fever. The first one. Well, they never found enough of her to determine the cause. The newspaper clipping trembled in Callowin's hands as she read the brief, cold account of Cornelius Grimm's latest wife's accidental death. The words swam before her eyes as the full horror of what she'd almost walked into became clear. Why? Didn't you tell me this before? She whispered. Jareth's laugh was bitter. Would you have believed me? Or would you have thought I was lying to keep you here for my own purposes? She looked up at him, seeing the pain etched in his weathered features. "And aren't you?" "Partly," he admitted with devastating honesty. "I won't lie to you, Callowin. I want you to stay. Every fiber of my being wants to keep you safe on this ranch forever. But I'd rather see you right away and break my heart than watch you die in that monster's house." The admission hung between them like a bridge neither quite dared to cross. Outside, the storm was weakening, but inside the ranch house, a different kind of tempest was building. "I have nowhere else to go," Callowin said finally. "No money, no family, no prospects. If not Silver Creek, then what? Stay here." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of mountains. "As what?" she asked. "Your housekeeper? Your mistress?" Jareth crossed the room in 3 quick strides and dropped to one knee beside her chair. His hand, so large they could have easily crushed hers, held her fingers with infinite gentleness. "As my wife." Callowin's heart stopped, then began racing like a wild thing. "We barely know each other. I know you're brave enough to travel 200 miles alone into dangerous country. I know you're proud enough to reject charity even when you need it. I know you're beautiful enough to stop my heart and stubborn enough to drive me to distraction." His thumb traced over her knuckles. "I know when I look at you, I see the future I never thought I'd have." Jaret. She wanted to say yes. Every instinct screamed at her to accept this incredible offer from this extraordinary man. But years of disappointment had taught her caution. This is so sudden. Life is sudden out here. You can die from a snake bite or live through a miracle all in the same day. The only thing that matters is recognizing what's important when you see it. Before she could respond, the sound of galloping hooves echoed from the yard. Jareth was on his feet instantly, his hand moving to his gun as he moved to the window. "Riders. Coming hard," he said grimly. 3 of them. Callowin joined him at the window, her stomach dropping as she recognized the lead rider despite the rain and distance. "It's them, the men from the station. They brought friends?" Jareth's jaw tightened as he counted the armed men surrounding his house. "Cordelia," he called. "Get Miss Brewster upstairs and stay with her. What are they doing here?" Callowin asked, though she feared she already knew. "My guess? Someone put a bounty on you. Grimm doesn't like his property to go missing." The words sent ice through her veins. "I'm not his property." "Try telling him that." Jareth checked his rifle, then moved toward the door. "Whatever happens, stay upstairs until I come for you." "Jareth." "Wait." She caught his arm, feeling the solid strength of him beneath her fingers. "Be careful." He covered her hand with his, and for a moment his hard mask slipped to show the man beneath, vulnerable, hopeful, afraid of losing what he'd just found. "Say you'll marry me," he said urgently. "If I'm going to fight for something, let me fight for my wife." Outside, voices were calling his name, demanding he turn over the woman. The sound of rifles being cocked carried clearly through the rain. "Yes," Callowin whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." The transformation in his face was instant and blazing. He kissed her then, hard and claiming, a promise sealed with desperate passion. Then he was gone, striding out into the storm to face whatever came. For them, the confrontation erupted like wildfire across the muddy ranch yard. "Blackstone," the lead rider's voice cut through the rain. "Send out the woman and nobody has to die today." Jareth stood on his porch, rifle cradled casually in his arms, presenting the picture of a man completely at ease despite being outnumbered 3-1. "I'm afraid that's not going to happen, boys." From her hiding place at the upstairs window, Callowin watched the deadly tableau unfold. 6 armed men had positioned themselves strategically around the house, cutting off all escape routes. Their leader, The same weasel-faced man who terrorized her at the station sat his horse with obvious confidence. "Mr. Grimm wants what belongs to him," the man called out. "The woman signed a contract. She's his legal property now." "Funny thing about contracts," Jareth replied conversationally. "They generally require both parties to be present when they're signed. Miss Brewster never made it to Silver Creek, which means any agreement is void. Don't matter none. Grimm paid good money for her transportation and expects delivery. Then Grimm can ask for a refund." The standoff stretched taut as a bowstring. Callowin could see ranch hands emerging from the bunkhouse and barn, their own weapons ready. Whatever else Jareth Blackstone was, he commanded fierce loyalty from his men. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," the leader snarled. "We got orders to bring her back alive if possible, dead if necessary. Either way, she's leaving with us. Over my dead body." "That can be arranged." The first shot shattered the tense silence like breaking glass. Callowin couldn't tell who fired first, but suddenly the yard exploded into chaos. Muzzle flashes lit the gray afternoon as men dove for cover behind water. Troughs and fence posts. Jareth moved with fluid grace for such a large man, rolling behind a fixed support pillar as bullets splintered the wood around him. His return fire was measured and deadly accurate. One of the attackers spun from his saddle with a scream. The back. Cordelia hissed, grabbing Callowin's arm. "Two of them are trying to get in through the kitchen." They could hear the sound of breaking glass from downstairs, followed by heavy footsteps. Callowin's heart hammered as she realized the men intended to take her while Jareth was pinned down outside. "The rifle," she said suddenly, remembering. The Winchester she'd seen in Jareth's bedroom. "Can you shoot?" "Better than most," Cordelia replied grimly. "Lived on the frontier too long not to learn." They crept down the hallway as boots thundered up the main staircase. Cordelia slipped into Jareth's room while Callowin pressed herself against the wall, praying they wouldn't be seen. The first man to reach the top of the stairs was young and nervous, his gun shaking in his hands. He never saw Cordelia emerge from the bedroom behind him. The stock of the Winchester cracked against his skull with a sound like splitting melons, and he crumpled unconsciously. His partner was warier, but no match for Cordelia's frontier cunning. She stepped into view at the far end of the hallway, deliberately drawing his attention and fire, while Callowin slipped behind him with a heavy brass candlestick from the hall table. "Sorry," she whispered to his unconscious form. Outside, the battle was reaching its crescendo. Jareth's ranch hands had the advantage of cover and familiarity with the terrain, but the attackers were desperate men with nothing to lose. The sound of gunfire was constant now, punctuated by shouts and screams. "We need to help," Callowin said, moving toward the window with one of the captured rifles. "You need to stay safe," Cordelia countered. "That's what he's fighting for." But Callowin had made her choice the moment she accepted Jareth's proposal. She wasn't going to cower while the man she'd agreed to marry risked everything for her. The window gave her a clear view of the yard and the man who'd started this nightmare. The leader of the attackers had taken cover behind the well systematically, firing at Jareth's position. Each shot forced her intended husband to keep his head down, preventing him from ending this. Callowin had never fired a rifle in her life, but desperation and love made up for inexperience. She steadied the weapon against the window frame, drew a careful bead on the man who tried to destroy her life, and squeezed the trigger. The shot took him high in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending his weapon flying. His scream of pain and surprise seemed to break the will of his remaining men, who began retreating toward their horses, but their leader wasn't finished. With his good arm, he drew a pistol and aimed it directly at Jareth's exposed position. Callowin's second shot was better than the first. The silence that followed the gunfire was deafening. Smoke drifted across the rain-soaked yard like ghostly fingers, and the acrid smell of gunpowder mixed with the clean scent of the storm. Callowin's hands shook as she lowered the rifle, the enormity of what she'd just done crashing over her like a wave. "Well," Cordelia said quietly from behind her, "I'd say you just proved you belong here." Below in the yard, Jareth emerged from behind his cover, his eyes immediately searching the upstairs windows until they found hers. Even from a distance, she could see the fierce pride and relief in his expression. The surviving attackers were retreating rapidly, their wounded leader slung across a saddle like a sack of grain. They'd learned a hard lesson about threatening what belonged to Jareth Blackstone. Is he? Callowin couldn't finish the question. "Alive," Cordelia confirmed, peering out at the retreating figures. "Though he'll be eating with his left hand for the rest of his days, assuming infection doesn't take him." That was fine shooting for someone who's never held a rifle. Callowin set the weapon aside with trembling hands. "I've never shot anyone before. You did what needed doing. Out here, that's the only morality that matters, protecting what you love." The words resonated through her as heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs. Jareth appeared in the doorway, his clothes torn and powder-burned, a thin line of blood trickling from a graze on his temple. But his eyes were blazing with life and something deeper, a fierce, possessive joy that made Callowin's knees weak. "You magnificent, impossible woman," he breathed, crossing the room in 2 strides and sweeping her into his arms. "I told you to stay safe." "I was staying safe," she replied against his chest, breathing in the scent of him, gunpowder and leather and something indefinably masculine. "By making sure you stayed alive." His laugh rumbled through his chest. "That shot from the window, that was you?" "She saved your life," Cordelia said dryly. "That yellow dog had a clean shot lined up before she put a bullet in his shoulder." Jareth pulled back to look into Callowin's eyes, his hands framing her face with infinite gentleness. "My brave, beautiful, deadly wife-to-be." "About that," Callowin sighed, sudden nervousness making her voice flutter. "I said yes in the heat of the moment. Maybe we should discuss." He silenced her with a kiss that left no room for doubt or discussion. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "No more discussion," he said firmly. "We're getting married." "Today?" "Today?" Callowin's eyes widened. "But we need a preacher and witnesses, and I'll send riders to fetch Reverend Morrison from town. My men can serve as witnesses. Cordelia can help you with the dress." His hands slid down to grip hers. "I'm not giving Grim or anyone else another chance to take you from me." "What about him?" Callowin asked. "Won't he send more men?" Jareth's expression grew cold and deadly. "Grim just learned that touching what's mine has consequences. But, just to make sure the message is clear, I'll be paying him a visit after our honeymoon." The promise in his voice sent a shiver through her, part fear, part arousal. This was a man who would burn down the world to protect what he loved. "And us?" she asked softly. "This happened so fast. What if we're making a mistake?" Jareth's hands tightened on hers. "Look at me, Callowin." When she met his eyes, she saw nothing but absolute certainty. "I've spent 10 years building this ranch, creating something lasting and worthwhile. But it was just wood and stone and cattle until you walked into my life. You're the heart I never knew it was missing, Jareth." "I love you," he said simply. "I loved you the moment I saw you at that station, standing brave and proud despite being terrified. I loved you when you challenged me, when you questioned me, when you fought beside me. I'll love you until the day I die and beyond." The declaration hung between them, raw and honest and completely overwhelming. Callowin felt tears prick at her eyes as she realized this incredible man was offering her everything she'd ever dreamed of: love, protection, a home, a future. I love you too, she whispered, the words feeling both strange and perfectly right on her lips. I think I have since you swept me up on that horse and carried me away from danger. Then marry me. Make this official before God and man. Yes. The word came without hesitation this time. Yes, Jareth Blackstone, I'll marry you. 6 months later, Calhoun Blackstone stood on the wraparound porch of her home, watching the sunrise paint the valley in shades of gold and crimson. The Broken Crown Ranch stretched before her like a promise fulfilled, every acre a testament to the love that had transformed two strangers into partners, lovers, and soulmates. Morning, Mrs. Blackstone. Strong arms encircled her from behind, as Jareth's deep voice rumbled against her ear. You're up early. She leaned back against his solid warmth, marveling as she did every day at how perfectly they fit together. I wanted to watch the sunrise. I still can't believe this is all real sometimes. Real as the ring on your finger, he murmured, pressing. A kiss to her temple. Real as the way you feel in my arms every night. Their wedding had been everything a frontier ceremony should be: simple, heartfelt, and witnessed by people who genuinely cared for their happiness. Reverend Morrison had performed the service in the ranch's main parlor, with Cordelia as matron of honor and half a dozen devoted ranch hands as witnesses. Calhoun had worn a dress of ivory silk that Cordelia had somehow procured from town, and Jareth had looked magnificent in his best black suit, but the real magic had been in the vows. They'd spoken, not the traditional words the preacher had suggested, but promises they'd written themselves, pledges that spoke of protection and partnership, of facing whatever challenges the frontier might throw at them together. Any regrets? Jareth asked, the question that had become their morning ritual. Only one, she replied, turning in his arms to face him. That it took those awful men threatening me to bring us together. I prefer to think of it as fate. He sighed, his gray eyes warm with contentment. Everything that happened led to this moment, to us. I wouldn't change a single minute of it. The past months had brought changes beyond their marriage. True to his word, Jareth had paid a visit to Cornelius Grimm, though he'd never told Calhoun exactly what had transpired during that meeting. All she knew was that Grimm had suddenly decided to relocate his business interests to California, far from the reach of angry ranchers with long memories. The ranch had prospered under their joint management. Calhoun had thrown herself into learning every aspect of the operation, from cattle breeding to financial management. Her education and natural intelligence had proven invaluable in expanding their operations, and several neighboring ranchers had begun consulting with the Blackstones on business matters. I have something for you, Jareth said, reaching into his shirt pocket to withdraw a folded letter. Calhoun took it curiously, recognizing the official seal of the territorial government. What is this? Read it. She unfolded the paper and gasped. A land grant, but this is… Jareth, this is for 2,000 additional acres. The territorial governor was impressed by our testimony about Grimm's operations. Seems he's been looking for a way to reward citizens who help clean up frontier justice. Jareth's grin was boyishly proud. We now own the largest ranch in 3 counties. We? Calhoun looked up at him with tears in her eyes. You put my name on the deed too? You're my partner in everything, Calhoun. What's mine is yours, now and always. She threw her arms around his neck, overwhelmed by the generosity of this man who had given her so much more than just safety and security. He had given her purpose, respect, and a love that grew stronger every day. I have something for you too, she whispered against his ear. What's that? Instead of answering, she took his hand and placed it gently on her still flat stomach. Understanding dawned in his eyes like sunrise, followed by a joy so intense it took her breath away. Are you sure? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. As sure as I am that I love you. She smiled through her happy tears. Our child will be born next spring when the valley is green and the future is brightest." Jareth lifted her off her feet, spinning her around as his delighted laughter echoed across the ranch. When he finally set her down, his face was wet with tears he didn't bother to hide. "A baby," he said wonderfully. "Our baby. The first of many, I hope," Callowin said boldly. "This ranch needs children to inherit it. Children who will know they're loved and protected," Jareth agreed. "Children who will understand that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places." As if summoned by their joy, Cordelia appeared in the doorway with coffee and the warm rolls that had become a morning tradition. "Well, now," she said, taking in their glowing faces, "I suppose congratulations are in order? How did you know?" Callowin asked in amazement. "Child, I've been keeping house for 30 years. A woman learns to read the signs." Cordelia's smile was radiant with happiness for them. "When should I start preparing the nursery?" "Spring," Jareth said, his arm tightening protectively around his wife. "By then, this will be the safest, most prosperous ranch in the territory." As they sat together on the porch, sharing breakfast and dreams of the future, Callowin marveled at the twists of fate that had brought her here. What had started as a desperate journey toward an arranged marriage had become the greatest love story she could have imagined. The sun climbed higher over the Broken Crown Ranch, warming the valley and the family that called it home. In the distance, cattle grazed peacefully, ranch hands went about their morning chores, and the business of building a legacy continued. But on the porch of the main house, 3 people who had found family in each other sat in comfortable companionship, watching their world wake up to another day of infinite possibility. "No regrets," Callowin whispered, her hand resting on her husband's strong chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "No regrets," Jareth agreed, pressing a kiss to her hair. "Only gratitude for the day I found you at that station and knew you were coming home with me." The end.